Unlike many of you watching this, Rick is extremely obsessed with himself. Maybe some of you feel the same, but the problem with Rick is that his sense of self-importance comes from a deep longing for love, intimacy, and human connection. This facade he has of appearing as though he doesn't need anyone is all one big barricade and nothing more than a defense mechanism. Deep down inside, he's upset, frustrated, and lonely. Throughout this 20-minute runtime, his ego was in the way at almost every beat of the story. If he never sorted it out, it could have easily cost him his life. Let me explain.
The Big Dipper.
At the start of the episode, Jerry's complaining to his father-in-law about a rake. As trivial as this might seem, it was the catalyst for everything that followed. Jerry thinks his neighbor Gene took his rake. The only problem is that he can't prove it. Sanchez doesn't have time for his shenanigans, and so the end result is that these two end up quarreling about who's actually smart and who just wastes their intelligence. Long story short, their minds swap, but a portion of the mind from each individual is still present in their respective bodies. Of course, during the first act of the episode, these two fight more and more. Their arguing is synonymous to that of an old couple on the brink of divorce. Funny thing is that these arguments all stem from trying to prove who's smarter based on the actions they take. So at the core, it's basically one huge ego war. For example, if Jerry does action A, he'll claim that it's of his own accord, but Rick will intervene and object and say no, the only reason Jerry did that is because Rick's mind made him do it, and vice versa. This happens for almost everything, even for things that are pretty redundant. The one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is when Jerry and Rick had to cooperate in order to drive the space cruiser, because if they didn't, it was going to kill them. Rick's ego is so big that when Morty is kidnapped and being held hostage, he scolds Jerry for not sounding intimidating enough. He says that it takes a long time to have this mystique regarding his persona, and Jerry is essentially ruining his street cred. Rick cares a lot about what people think of him. His ego is fragile. That's how he and Jerry ended up in this situation in the first place. All because Jerry questioned his intelligence. Which now when you think about it, Jerry's questioning actually carries weight. If you claim to be the smartest man in the universe, why are you bothered about what someone you deem inferior to you such as Jerry has to say? If you're confident in your abilities, you just shrug it off and move on with your day. Sanchez is a person who does everything for himself. After all, that's exactly what an egomaniac is. He lacks any real emotional intelligence. He's prone to quickly use harsh and condescending language in order to belittle anyone around him he feels is of minor importance. This dude throws verbal jabs at his grandkids and feels no remorse as they stomach it. Like, come on, that has to be the epitome of arrogance. During the second act of the episode, Rick and Jerry start to bond. The only reason they get along now is because Jerry is becoming more and more like Rick. People who are conceited get along with other conceited people. That's just the truth. It's the same with people who are addicted to Call of Duty lobbies. They all feel like they're brethren or something. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. The more time they spend together, the more destructive they become. People with massive egos are known to blaze a trail of carnage wherever they go. People like this are basically like forest fires. They're hard to put out, but easily burn everything they touch. It's been a couple of seasons since we last saw these two actually get along. And this time the pleasure Rick is having from spending time with Jerry all stems from the fact that he's practically looking at a mirror. Jerry's hair is even positioned like Rick's. He even wears Rick's signature lab coat to show that Rick's mind is infesting Jerry's brain and slowly but surely winning. But eventually Rick realizes that this is no good. You can only live in a fantasy for so long before you have to wake up and smell the coffee. So he opts to return things to the way they were. But instead of initially doing this, him and Jerry pull a Dragon Ball Z and fuse. Only after implementing both of their personalities and ways of thinking can they actually function. Essentially, Rick had to kill his ego in order to rescue his family. He could have kept terrorizing the universe with Jerry, but I mean, you know how the saying goes. All good things must come to an end.